I'm Tim Westerbeck, president of Eduvantis, a data-driven strategic consulting firm serving more than 150 of the world's top higher education institutions. Rich Phillips, dean of the Robinson College of Business at Georgia State University in Atlanta, joins the Business Education Revolution podcast. The so-called enrollment cliff has arrived, with college enrollment down 15% from its peak in 2011, along with major demographic shifts in the college-age population. We'll discuss Georgia State's innovative strategies and success attracting and retaining traditionally underserved populations as both a social good and as a way to generate essential new revenue streams in higher education.
There's a great concern in management education these days as to where the new revenue streams are going to come from. How is growth going to occur in markets where there are a lot of pressures around this, and there are students that are harder to attract? It's just more complicated in many cases, and the sustainability of the enterprise in many cases is being threatened.
I talk to a lot of deans who say the same thing. I don't think, revenue growth is necessarily going to come from the kind of traditional source of where we've seen it, of kind of increasing, prices from top line growth. And we've certainly had a strategy here since I've become dean, going on 10 years ago now, of finding alternative revenue streams to supplement and really to continue to increase what it is that we do here at the Robinson College.
There may be historically untapped markets that can be used, I think you're saying, to counterbalance some of these downward trends and pressures.
In the United States, if we look at new households being formed, in 1970, if a new household was being formed, the likelihood that there was a bachelor's degree in that household from young people that were graduating, if they came from their parents' house and they were in the 75th percentile or above, there was a 40% chance they had a bachelor's degree in that new household. By 2010, that was at 81%. And so what we like to say around here at Georgia State is that 90% of rich kids went to college and 90% of them graduated. Over that same time period, in 1970, if it was a child growing up in the median household income or below, that was less than 20%. And by 2010, it was still less than 20%. So one market to tap is that literally just half of American households are a place where we can go and look for students who haven't historically either gone to college or had success in college, and how do we find ways to demonstrate that there is a value proposition of going to college, and then if they can get to college and attract them to college, demonstrate that they can have success in college.
And hearing that seems maybe a little easier said than done.
Not only suggests that it's easier said than done, just the data says it's easier said than done, right? I mean, if you have 90% of kids going to college and 90% of them graduating from one socioeconomic demographic, and only 20% having success in half of the country, there's something going on there, unless don't believe that other half has, kids that are smart enough or capable enough to go to college and do well. And I'm just not sure that that's the case.
We've all heard a lot about the impact of demographics on higher education and, going forward. And, when you look at the numbers, not only are there fewer students who are going to college, and the demographics within that is significantly changed as well, but even among the students that are available, as you're saying, the numbers are pretty clear that fewer of them are going to college as well.
Yeah.
And what do we do about that?
No, I think it's clearly the value proposition for many students to think about going to college is declining, and the risk associated with going to college and that it's going to have a payoff is also perhaps increasing across many degrees. And so let's say, if you like, the expected return, which is a function of both what you think you might get out of it, but also kind of the variance around what you might get out of it, is also increasing. And so how is it that we as college administrators and leaders within college can both demonstrate and increase what that expected payoff is, but also decrease the riskiness of what that expected payoff might be.
Would you mind sharing with me at least some thoughts on what those things are that have to be done in order to do that?
If we're talking about students coming from low-income backgrounds, it starts even before they get enrolled in their first class. One of the challenges that many colleges that are trying to attract low-income students deal with is this problem of summer melt. So students that are applying for college, depositing at college, state their intention to go to college in May, and then when August comes, they don't show up. At Georgia State, before we took a serious intervention into this challenge, that percentage for us was approaching 20%. 20% of our freshman class would say they were intending to come to college and then not show up in August. That's a huge percentage, and the enrollment team and the admissions team is working hard, and then not having them show up. And when you talk to low-income students and find out why, students from low-income backgrounds they're getting done with school. That support network they had from the guidance office at their high school is gone, and they may be working 1 or 2 jobs over the course of the summer. And where are they getting their questions answered at that time? And if they're working 1 or 2 jobs, and the office at the university is only open from 8 to 5 to, I have a question on my FAFSA, or I need a vaccine form, but I can't get to my doctor's office, and do I really need it, or is there another way that I can resolve that challenge? So how do I call the university to get that question answered if it's only open, during normal business hours, and I'm working, from 7 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night across my 2 jobs, so I can afford my tuition to go to school. So one of the things we did here was to create a 24/7 chatbot that would allow students to be able to contact the university when they were ready. And that chatbot over time has gotten better and better and better. And a lot of those questions can be resolved without necessarily needing human intervention. But that doesn't mean that humans don't necessarily get involved. If we see a student that can't resolve those questions, then that will ultimately get kicked out to an advisor who can then reach out to that student if we're not able to resolve it some other way.
It's not just about enrollment, is it? It's about retention as well. And I think historically some of the first generation or underserved populations have struggled in many institutions to complete the course. And to graduate.
Yeah, so there's lots of reasons why students might struggle with first generation or low income students. Some low income students they have very high IQs, for example, but their high school preparation may not have been great for collegiate work. One of the things we do here is we look at at-risk students who we think may be well suited for a research university undergraduate education, but their high school preparation might not have been what we would have hoped it would have been. And so we have a Summer Success Academy for those students. So we would suggest, hey, come to the Summer Success Academy. It's a cohort program where we have them go through a couple of courses that they would normally take in their freshman year anyway, English composition or maybe their introductory math course. But they do it in a cohort way, they build some relationships, and they get some study skill development courses and develop a set of behaviors and activities that engage them in the university, but also help to bring them up to speed on what they might not have learned or gotten out of their high school years to position them to be successful when the freshman class arrives in full.
What about the social issues, the sort of awakening of social issues side of the equation, this convergence of technology, social issues, and change that you suggest has favored a business school like yours?
It's not just the technology. So the technology is one piece of it, but it's the acceleration of the technology, it's the acceleration of the computing, which all of that is driving an acceleration of innovation, right? New ideas that are driving the economy today. But a lot of that driving of the economy today that's going to happen because we're challenging and creating solutions to problems that haven't been really dealt with before. And the opportunity there is that it's going to take diverse teams multiple perspectives in order to be able to address and challenge and take on those opportunities. And so on the one hand, you have companies that are looking to bring in diverse talent and create creative teams that can really address these kind of really thorny, complex challenges. And on the other hand, we also had a social awakening during COVID where we want to create more opportunities for people across the socioeconomic income pyramid and across multiple racial classes, where systemic frictions have created people that are, classes of people that have gotten stuck in certain parts of that socioeconomic pyramid.
And the more people piece of that goes back to our original start of our conversation, which is, where do new markets come from? What are populations that can be tapped and brought into higher education that can allow for growth? And the thing I'm wondering also is, what about institutions that don't have access, like you might, because of your circumstance, your location, your situation, institutional type, who might not have access to tapping some of those traditionally untapped and unleveraged markets?
Yeah, and I think part of the story I'm telling, Tim, is that this is a socioeconomic story, right? And socioeconomics is in every part of the country. So I'm from the upper Midwest, and there's a socioeconomic demographics that exist there, even though the population is majority white. But you have people that are at the bottom of that income pyramid as well as people at the top of that income pyramid. And the story I told at the beginning of this talk today was that, it was really upper middle income kids that were going to college, and lower income, medium to lower income kids who were not going to college and finding that value. In the South, right, for historical reasons or for systemic frictions or inequities or perhaps just outright racism, we've had other reasons why people are perhaps stuck in one part of the socioeconomic lower income part of the income pyramid versus others who have perhaps white privilege that keeps others in a different part of the income pyramid. Regardless of where people are in the pyramid, our industry has not well served people in different parts of that socioeconomic pyramid.
You've used the word value a lot, creating value, representing value. One of the things we all read about these days is that the American population generally and a lot of individuals don't feel that higher education is offering the value for the cost and things of these nature, and that the value is in question at some level. What do we do about that?
Yes, we have to do a much better job of saying, if you come to college, our admissions processes allow us to say, you have a really, really good shot that if we admit you, you're going to graduate. The idea that students come to college and there's a low probability that they're going to graduate, that's not acceptable. That's part of the, the volatility of, or the risk of going to college is just too high. That decreases the value, the expected return of going to college.
Every institution has to be sustainable ultimately. What are some of the implications of working with a student population or using that as an avenue of growth, if you will, that it has on the financial stability and capability of the academic institution? How does that play out?
Well, I would argue a couple things. One, I think we're expanding the markets, right, that we've seen before, right? We're tapping into markets that other academic institutions have found difficult to work with. So in many ways, we're expanding into new markets rather than kind of just competing and looking for market share against other institutions in the region that we've traditionally competed in. It's not to say that we ignore those markets. We certainly are excited to get out there and compete with the best and win our fair share of those of students from all socioeconomic backgrounds. And we need to demonstrate the value proposition and expand into new markets as well. But a lot of what we've been talking about here today is, what are the investments we can make to make sure that when Susie comes to college, she stays in all semester and continues paying tuition for the full semester.
Is it harder for the institution, though, to keep a student in the program and still be able to for lack of a better term, maintain the sort of financial margins and such that you need as an organization on the students that you serve.
Well, I think it's definitely the case that you have to be wise in the way you build these systems and leverage technology. You cannot just throw FTEs at these challenges. And the beauty is that there's a lot of technology that allows you to build support systems and a lot of self-support for students that allow you to scale without having to do this all with personnel. I gave the example of the chatbot. There's 5 or 6 people that put that chatbot together, and it's used, tens of thousands of times, right, by prospective students every single year. Historically, that would have taken, a small army of, a call center, right, to be able to do that. We don't do that today.
Rich, are there any closing remarks or ideas, visions you'd like to share on this topic as we close this conversation?
Yeah, I think the one thing we haven't talked about as much, and I want to share with Dean colleagues, is going back to the comment about not just on the student success and the support side of students, but also making sure that the experience that students are having, the curriculum we're presenting, and the practical skills that they need to be successful in the 21st century are equally as important in demonstrating the value of a degree today. If I go back to the conversations that I had early in my deanship, and just being very struck by the kinds of students and graduates that employers were looking for from business students, and the skill sets they were looking for and the mindsets they were looking for from business students, that they could solve problems that they hadn't seen before, be able to do it as part of diverse teams, be able to navigate in worlds that had a lot of ambiguity, and be able to leverage the kinds of digital tools that are used both within business but on the kind of engineering and computer science sides of campuses, right? These are all ways in working which are really critical in order for our management majors to be able to work with and be successful in business for tomorrow.
Well, Dean Phillips, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me today. I appreciate the invitation to campus to spend this time with you, and thanks for sharing your insights. I'm sure they'll be important and valuable to a lot of people. So thank you.
Tim, I've enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much.